Okay, welcome to Let the Magic Speak for Itself, episode 1 here. We're doing something a bit different than my usual gameplay videos here today. We're covering the banned and restricted list for Legacy and Vintage and my thoughts on that ahead of the WOTC announcement at the end of the month on March 31st, 2025 about the banned and restricted list. They'll make some changes to various formats there, probably. And I'm also away this week, so I wanted something pre-recorded. I don't have much of a backlog or any really, so I wanted a normal Thursday video. Normally do videos on Thursday and Sunday. I wanted to keep at that while I'm away. So we're doing banned and restricted today. I've only done something like this once before. If you go back a couple of weeks, I did a tier list covering combo decks. I did a tier list by skill for those. That was a fun video, a little silly, but I think it was a fun one. So if you want to check that out, you can. And this is the only the second time I'm doing a non-gameplay video. So if you like this kind of content, let me know down below, and like and subscribe if you want. And or if you don't, let me know that too. And I'll stick to. If enough people say so, I'll stick just to the gameplay videos. Anyway. So I think the important thing here is if you're going to talk about banned and restricted changes and whatnot, you need to have an overarching goal or philosophy. So I'm going to talk about that first before I get into kind of what I'm looking for and what I would want to do if I was in charge here. And I think one of the big problems with Legacy and Vintage, especially Legacy, we're mostly going to cover Vintage here today, is that there really isn't an overarching philosophy for either format. I think that's a bit of a problem, especially when trying to talk about banned and restricted things, because people are coming at it from different perspectives. So I'm going to go through what I think is important and how I would be making this decision if I was in charge at WOTC here, before we get into some of the recommendations. All right, so overall, I would say that growing the player base should be the main goal when it comes to making decisions for the banned and restricted list. I think that's overall the most important thing that we can be doing. I think that ties very closely to any other goals at Hasbro, which are going to be, at the higher levels, make money. Obviously, there's a very high correlation between a higher player base and then the company making more money and a more successful product. But you can't really just have a goal of making money. That's not a very functional thing for people in the actual game design space to do. So I think more practical goal here is to grow the player base. So that's what we're going with here. And from that, then you go, okay, well, how do you grow the player base? And usually that's going to be by driving engagement, people driving engagement with the formats. And I think the main driver for engagement, in my experience of over 10 years now of playing Legacy, in the last couple of years Vintage, is excitement. People, when they're excited about the format, they'll talk about it, they'll play it, they'll build decks, they'll go to tournaments. They're not as excited, they're not going to do that. And so I think that's really what's important here. We're going to try and grow the player base by maximizing the amount of excitement people are having when engaging with Legacy and Vintage in different forms, whether that be watching, playing, building decks, talking to friends about it, etc., etc. And I think there are 4 main ways to grow excitement, and we'll cover all of them. I think the last one is where the BNR comes into play. I'm just going to go through these from top to bottom. Thought about this for a minute, so I'm just going to go through it. The first one's game rules. Now, in Legacy and Vintage, these aren't going to really change, but they can be very impactful. EDH was a kind of community-driven format where they changed the rules of the game fundamentally and made it multiplayer. They made it 4 players, made 40 life. They made actual structural changes to the normal 2-player, 20 life, 7 cards, 60 card decks, and it's 100 now. So they made a bunch of structural changes to the game, and it worked. It was extremely popular. EDH now is the main format of Magic. It's the main focus of Hasbro. It's a lot of what they'll make cards for now. So you can drive engagement and create excitement here by changing the game rule. Now, we're not going to be doing that here today. think the only time we did try and do that was in recent memory for Legacy and Vintage, was the companion change where we had that 3-mana tax to it. I think that did help. People were not happy about companions, especially Luris here before, and now they're still controversial, but a lot more palatable. And some of them are just banned still, but I think that was a good change to the game rules to create excitement. The second thing, though, after game rules, I've got down is community. Community drives a lot of excitement, at least for me personally, and a lot of other people too. A lot of the reasons why I will play Magic in paper and why I'm interested in playing and talking about Magic and building decks at all is so that I can talk to friends about them. And I don't think that's very controversial. Magic is about the gathering. Not everybody plays it for the community, but I would say the majority of people, that's just a big driver, is, seeing friends at tournaments, talking to them on Discord or, different chat groups. All of that's important. But again, nothing to do with BNR. So we're going to move on. The third one I've got here is prizes. Again, nothing to do with BNR, but this one's obviously important. Big, prize money tournaments and recognition tournaments, either monetary or non-monetary, either, prize money, prizes, big cards, or just getting your name out there, or, being in the top 8 on stream, are all things that are very exciting. Eternal Weekend is a huge tournament. Every year people come out for it. You can win, thousands of dollars in the top there. All the top 8 players will get thousands of dollars in prizes, and you get good recognition here. That's exciting. Again, nothing to do with BNR. So we've covered game rules, community, and prizes here. And the fourth thing I think you can do in order to create excitement in the format, which in turn drives engagement and can grow the player base, is the cards. And that's where we're coming in here with the BNR. Now, we don't have any... BNR had nothing to do with the new cards in the format. Not at first, obviously. WOTC is going to print what they want. And BNR kind of reacts to that as needed. Now what we can do here is make changes here to try and drive engagement and create excitement through use of the BNR. And that's where we are now. Now, I'm going to start with Legacy. Now, I think this was going to be short because I don't really have any actual changes for Legacy that I want to see, but I think the problem with Legacy is the overall philosophy. I think there are two groups of people. There's the people that are very excited about very specific cards in the format. Things like Brainstorm, Ancient Tomb, Reanimate, Animate, Entomb, Gaia's Cradle. A lot of these cards that are now called pillars of the format. And how Legacy has evolved is they've taken cards that are, everyone knows are too good and are at a power level above, other things for the most part. And instead of balancing the game like you would in other games where you remove things that are too good, we've said that they're okay, and we're going to try and balance around that. So you've got people that really are dedicated to those cards here, and then you've got people who want a more balanced format. And I think right now nobody is happy. I think that's kind of the core problem here, is that we've got these pillars of the format that we're not going to want to touch. And then also WOTC is printing all these new cards that are extremely strong, getting close to that power level, and combined with some of the pillars to make the game very different than it was a long time ago. And neither of these, WOTC doesn't want to change either of these. They want to leave Brainstorm, Reanimate, Ancient Tomb, etc., Days in the format, all these old cards that people like. They also don't want to ban all the new cards. They want to be very selective about banning stuff. They're usually very conservative. We've only had a couple cards banned every year, while we've had dozens and dozens of new playables coming into the format every year. And I think something has to give. I don't think you can have the pillars all stand as they are and have all these new strong cards come into the format and create a game that people enjoy. And my take on this is I think since the second part, where all the new cards at the higher power level, I don't think that's going to change. I just don't think that's negotiable on Hasbro's part. They're very clearly doing this to create excitement and drive with those cards here, and drive sales. I don't see that changing. And I think what has to give, I think some of the pillars need to go. I think we need to reevaluate the pillars in Legacy, and some of them I think need to get knocked down so that we can create a better game here. And I know a lot of people, the ones actually people that are still playing Legacy at this point, are doing so because of those pillars, which is a problem for this kind of an idea. But I do think that's what needs to happen. I don't think the whole pillar of the format concept can really coexist at the same time with all these new strong cards and create a good game. I just don't think Legacy is a good game right now. I don't think it's very interesting, which is a shame because I've played it for years and years and I've spent a lot of time on it. I do think it could be a good game. I don't think it's impossible. I think if you had a game where you just took no ban list except for cards that are offensive, let's say an anti-cards, you just started from there like they did with Pioneer and then just ban stuff as needed, I think you could create a game in Legacy that is very good and fun and balanced and interesting. I just don't think it can exist right now with the pillars of the format as they stand. I do think with the card pool in Legacy, there is definitely the ability to make a good game. So that's kind of where I stand on Legacy. And now I'm going to switch to Vintage. So before I start here, you got a tier list in front of me. I'm not going to cover it too much, but big shout out to Adeline from Vintage Discord who shared this with me. And I was able to put this together. I'm quite happy with that. I did a little survey in Vintage Discord as well. I asked people if you could unrestrict one card, just one, or none, what would it be? And by far, the biggest answer I got from a number of different people is Channel. And I agree with this. Just to, round out the thing here, somebody also suggested, one person said Brainstorm, one did Saga, one said Strip Mine, one said Troll. And I think later on one person said Vexing Ball, which I'd also be okay with. But definitely the biggest one here was Channel, and I agree with that. I think Channel by far is the card that is most likely to create a whole new interesting archetype if it was unrestricted. One channel isn't very good, but I think if you had 4 channels, it's definitely, in my opinion, the most likely card to create a whole new archetype in Vintage that isn't, overly busted or anything, but does create interesting gameplay, drives excitement and engagement in the format there by people trying to tinker with it, etc., people trying it out, people watching those videos. I think it would do a lot of good for the format. So that's the one that I would go for there. And I've got some others here in the impactful row that I do think could be looked at. I've sort of ordered them in the order here that I would kind of look at unrestricting them. Yeah, but definitely Channel is my favorite there. As far as bans restrictions go, I don't expect WOTC to have any restrictions on the end of this month here in Vintage or bans, and I think that's fine, and I'd be very happy with that if there were no restrictions. But I do think that there is longer term kind of an overarching problem with Vintage that I do think needs to get addressed at some point probably, and that's Luris. So I switched over here, and this is the list of decks from the Vintage Creator Showdown that's happening today, actually just starting. As we speak, I'm going to be watching that after I finish this video here. But this is all the content creators and what decks they chose. And kind of why we're looking at this, I think a lot of these players are very good. You've got, Hall of Famers like Reed, Duke, world champions, you've got Nathan Stoyer, Nassif in here, on top of like Justin, Max Storshin, who won one of the Vintage Journal weekends this year. um, Terabad, a lot of other players who were just exceptionally good here. And I think this is a better indication of what's really good in the format than the win rates, to be fair. So I like win rates in order, if you can see, if a deck has a high play rate and an over 55% win rate, which is kind of the barrier that WOTC has set in the past, I think if a deck is played a lot and has a higher win rate, over 55%, which is arbitrary, but I think it's a reasonable number as set by WOTC, I think there definitely is a problem with the deck and it's stifling creativity. I think a lot of the enjoyment that comes from Magic and the excitement is on, solving puzzles, and if the puzzle's already solved, it's not particularly interesting. So I think win rates are useful when looking at kind of obvious things that we need to change in order to try and fix the format. But after that, I'm not particularly interested in win rates. What I'm much more interested in is what decks and are the top players looking at, and are they converging on an idea? And as you can see here, there's, what is this, 35 players in this event. And then we've got what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 out of 35 players, so half here, are choosing to play Lurrus. Now, as you can see, there is diversity here, which is kind of what brings me to the point of I'm okay with them not restricting anything now. You've got Lurrus Breach, Lurrus Doomsday, Lurrus Deathrite Shaman, 2 flavors of Lurrus Control, Lurrus Hermit, Lurrus PO of different flavors here. There is diversity within the Lurrus deck, but I think we are seeing a very big convergence of the top players here that you should be playing Lurrus of some sort. And that is concerning to me. I do think that is too much. I am not thrilled about that. I do think that while Vintage is a great game right now, I like to say Vintage is the paradise, and sort of in jest and Discord sometimes, but it is. I think it's the best format that of the eternal ones that right now for me. But I do think there's like an overarching potential long-term problem here with Lurrus creating a convergence here. And it's more of a situation where like you just should be playing Lurrus. I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. Like Raker Shops can definitely compete with Lurrus, especially the control versions, which is why you see a bunch of people playing Raker Shops here. But that's sort of it. You've got the Lurrus players, the Raker Shops players, which are trying to take advantage of Lurrus and go over the top. And you've just got a smattering of other things here. Most of these decks aren't performing particularly well right now, but they are, things that people like that are still strong and, can obviously spike a tournament here. But I do think, that is long term. I would like to see Lurrus banned if this continues and people continue to, especially the top players, converge on Lurrus. The other card that I've got in my eyesight here is on the shop side of things. I think maybe if you're going to take away Lurrus, I want to take away something there. I think Ring and Grim Monolith are potentially things to look at, because the issue for me is if you take away Lurrus, I think you need to take away some other cards too from some top decks in order to try and level out the form. I think just taking Lurrus would be a problem. I think you have to kind of level out some of the other decks that are just at a power level below it. Last year we had, maybe it was 2023, I think it was 2023, we had a really strong performance for a lot of the year from Atraxa Oath. That deck is still excellent. That deck hasn't gone anywhere. Doomsday hasn't gone anywhere. There are other really strong decks. So the biggest concern with banning Lurrus is you just have this pile of really strong combo decks. I think some things do need to get taken down a notch here in order to, if you're going to hit Lurrus. So I'd be looking at either the Ring or Grim Monolith in shops potentially. Probably Grim Monolith. All the other Chaos mana is restricted. I think putting Grim Monolith into that pile would, be in line with how the format has evolved. And then my last idea here before I sign off, and this one's a bit controversial, is Force of Will. And the reason why I want to look at Force of Will and potentially think that's one to get restricted is its main use case is to force through broken combos. You can use it to force through a turn 1 Oath of Druids, force through a turn 1 Doomsday, force through a turn 1 the One Ring from Jewel Shops here, which a couple people are still playing. Still a very strong deck. And I think that proactive element of Force of Will is the issue. Now, obviously, you need free spells in Vintage in order to stop opponents' crazy stuff happening on turn 1. I personally think that a 4 Force of Negation, 1 Force of Will as kind of a stock free protection suite, maybe with some Mind Break traps in there too, is kind of a better, healthier blue protection shell. I think that would really limit some of the Vintage decks that are trying to jam a combo protected by Force of Will very quickly. I think this is especially important if Lyris goes, because Lyris is the main control deck of the format right now, and arguably can only really exist because of how powerful Lyris is. So I would be concerned that there would be just a lot of blue combo decks using Force of Will to proactively push through a combo afterwards if we only ban Lyris and that was it. So those are my ideas here. Not a long video, just wanted to get something out. If you have any ideas or comments from what I said there, or if you have any other, things you would change about my tier list here, I'd be happy to hear about them down below in the comments. And if you're still listening and enjoyed this, throw a like and a subscribe and check out some of my other gameplay videos here. Alright, thanks and see you next time.